Hello and welcome to SpeakEasy. The United States and Israeli attacks on Iran continue for the 24th day today. World energy prices are in a spiral. Some experts are projecting that oil prices might reach $175 a barrel. The attacks don't seem to end. President Donald Trump of the United States is now threatening major attacks on energy facilities, power plants in Iran, to which the Iranians have said they will respond to. So, what does this mean for the world, for global energy supplies, for India's strategic autonomy, for the world economy? And we have today a special guest, Mr. Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary who's dealt with many of these issues in the past. So I'm going to go straight and ask him, Mr. Sibal, do you think that the world is seeing a new imperialism today?
Yes, of course, and they make no bones about it. If you look at Mark Rubio's speech at the Munich Security Conference, he's singing praises of the era of colonialism and empire building and characterized all the liberation movements as communist movements. And then when you see on the ground what they're doing in terms of, let's say, the Western Hemisphere, where they're saying very clearly, this is our backyard. And they're reviving the Monroe Doctrine and adding to that a Donroe Doctrine. And they want to keep Russia, China out of this region. But why? There are independent countries there. And countries like Brazil are major countries, part of BRICS. And they have a certain view about how the world should be governed. And they want to expand their relationship in all directions. China is a major partner, economic partner of Brazil. And he is most vocal with regard to de-dollarization, whereas other members of BRICS are a little more subdued on that. And then what they are doing today in West Asia is an attempt to gain full physical control of the oil resources of this region and make these countries, if Iran gets defeated and collapses, then take control of the future development of this region and give space to Israel to expand as it wants to. So in other words, it will be
this will end with Trump, Mr. Sibal? You think this policy, once he ceases to be president, or will we see a continuum in American, because there is a lot of continuum in American foreign policy. Trump may be a departure in many ways, but there is you think it will end with him?
I think the rather brash and overtly insensitive, brutal, domineering, expansionist urges of the present administration under Trump would become more muted because there is a division within the United States. And the Democrats are opposed to this. And within the Republicans, there is dissent, but since elections are coming, and if Trump does not endorse some of these fellows, then they may feel concerned that they may not win the elections. So they are relatively quiet. So I think, look, it's not as if under the previous administrations, when the Republican...
What happened in Gaza, I mean, that was under Biden's watch it began.
Yes, indeed. And the entire war against Russia in Ukraine, the expansion of NATO, all these things, and of course Iraq and Libya and Syria.
How does the rest of the world deal with this America?
Very difficult. Very difficult because Trump has still 2.5 years or more to go. So we have to live with him unless something dramatic happens and his wings are clipped by the Congress.
Which is unlikely so far.
No, it can happen if he loses the midterm elections and the House swings to the Democratic side. Then many of his plans and policies will come under control, certainly. And then, in fact, what people say is that there will be one motion of impeachment after another because he committed so many, breaches of the law and the manner in which he's dealing with the internal political system, grabbing all the power, by the executive and not accepting the due role of the Congress in the formulation of foreign policy and some other things, and all that ICE and everything else. Of course, people are happy that he's controlled immigration, but the dark side of that,
So to return to West Asia and what's happening there, how do you? I mean, it's 24 days. Iran is still firing missiles. It's not as if they've taken it lying down. How do you see this conflict unfolding? We know some of the events, what is happening. It's a daily battle. Now, if they do attack the energy facility, the Iranians have promised a response. They have also managed to, now we do know that the Israelis even have a nuclear facility because they've accepted that Dimona. So, how do you think this is going to play itself out? Because it's not Iraq, where it was a one-man show, where Saddam Hussein collapsed and things became quiet. It's not. It's not the Hamas, which really, I mean, has an armed force, where it is not an army, or it didn't have the kind of resources the Iranians possess. So, how do you think this is going to play out?
Couple of things. One, after Israel attacked the South Pars oil field, Trump said this was not done with my consent, and he said that he has asked Israel to stop it. And now he says he's going to attack the energy facilities of Iran. So where is the consistency? Now, why was he so upset that Israel had attacked the oil facilities of Iran? His concern was that global oil prices will shoot up. As you said, already they're $114 or something. They may actually go up even more if this continues. So there is a lot of inconsistency. You can't take him at his word. He says one thing one day, another thing another day.
In fact, day is being kind. I mean, it changes every hour almost. Yeah.
Secondly, insofar as Dimona is concerned, everybody knows about the Dimona nuclear reactor, and that
even the IAEA has spoken about it.
No, but this is common knowledge. Yeah. Now the point is that whether in this complex these Israeli nuclear weapons are stored, that's a question mark, because Israel has never admitted that it has nuclear weapons, but it's an open secret that they have them. Because if Israel talks about an existential threat, then the only way you can deal with an existential threat is by the use of nuclear weapons. Everybody says that, even Russia, even Putin says that. If there's an existential threat to Russia.
Do you think the Israelis, if they find themselves on the losing side, do you think they might consider using a nuclear weapon on Iran?
Unlikely, but one can't rule it out. For the simple reason that there are people in the government, the extreme right-wing messianic elements, who hark back to the Bible and the promise made by Jehovah that Israel will be from the Nile to the Euphrates, and that there'll be Armageddon, and then God will take notice and will send back Christ or God or Jesus or whatever back to the earth, and then everything will be hunky-dory. But they seem to believe that. Now, these kind of people, if they believe in Armageddon and think that Armageddon is the blueprint for the God to come back on earth and protect and save Israel, theoretically they can do it, but I don't know what the checks and balances are
and how
within the system.
The Iranian resistance so far to the daily attacks by the Americans and the Israelis.
Remarkable, very surprising. After all,
for a country which has been under sanctions
for years and years, they decapitated the supreme leader and all the heads of the armed forces, IRGC and everything else, intelligence, and down the line about 40 people were murdered. But as I understand, the Iranians were prepared for this. Now, this may be rumors, one doesn't know, I'm not inside Iran. But according to what one hears, they had actually gone down at the fourth level. That if first level, second level, third level gets decapitated, they'll go to the fourth level. And then they have decentralized the whole thing and given power to local commanders with written instructions of what they have to do. And they don't have to get permission from any central authority, because if the central authority is removed, decapitated, then institutionally the country collapses. So in order to prevent that, they have done that. So I would say it's remarkable. especially after 40 years of sanctions, the manner in which, by whatever means, they have developed these technologies, these missiles and everything else. And why have they focused on the missiles and drones all these years? Looking ahead, it is good planning, because they knew that they can't have any air force, and they don't have an air force. So what is their deterrent? Their deterrent are missiles and drones, and they have produced them in such large quantities and spread them all over the country. And it's a very big country.
It's a big country.
And it's a mountainous country, so they can hide these. Very difficult to detect all these missiles and drones. And then overlooking the Strait of Hormuz, you have these hills where you can hide the launchers and everything else. So they have planned it very well. And I must say, it's remarkable that after 24 days of,
Daily
bombing,
bombardment,
daily bombardment, they are saying that they have hit 8,000 or 10,000 sites already, 10,000 attacks they've made, both Israel and US. And despite that, they've gone ahead, and now they've unveiled their Khorramshahr or whatever missile with a IRBM range and tried to actually attack Diego Garcia.
So what is your sense? I mean, some analysts believe that what is important for Iran is to survive.
Yes.
Yes. Survival, in a sense, is victory for them. I mean, it may be a tough job, but for the Americans and the Israelis, say a minimum control of the Straits of Hormuz, that is what they might be looking for. What is your sense?
I think if there's a stalemate, if let's say Iran survives, the problem does not end at all. Which means, therefore, either United States accept that it has been subject to a defeat in inverted commas, because if this happened,
the Houthis, he pulled back Donald Trump. He declared victory and he moved on.
Yeah, but in this case, if the objective was to control Iran's nuclear program and its missile program,
which they said they took out last year,
and its regional role, that can't happen if Iran survives. Which means Iran is weakened, but it still continues to function and therefore can rebuild these resources. Which means, therefore, that the central reason why they went into and started attacking Iran doesn't get resolved. Then what happens? Will they then attack Iran again after? Can they force Iran into capitulating totally and agreeing to all the demands that the Americans are making? And if Iran survives, it means they're not going to yield to these demands. So it's a huge issue for US, for Israel, and for the Gulf states. Because an Iran that survives means that there will be constant danger to the security of the Gulf states. And if there's constant danger, and I'll complete the point. If there's a constant danger to the security of the Gulf states, which means their entire model of development gets jeopardized.
Some people are even saying there may be regime change in some of the Gulf countries, if this continues, because there is a lot of dissatisfaction in those governments, in societies also.
I don't think so, because if you look at UAE, the number...
Bahrain is cited as an example.
No, I'll just come to that. UAE, the 3.7 million outsiders, Indians plus others. So the local people, the local population, Emirati population is very little. And then it's a highly controlled society. Saudi Arabia, likewise. Bahrain is a different thing, because Bahrain, the majority population is Shia. And in fact, if you have seen the clips on TV when the missiles were coming from Iran and hitting them, they were applauding it. So Bahrain, already there was a revolt against the Bahrain Emir during the Arab Spring.
Overall, when we look at, the Gulf security has been purchased by many of these sheikdoms by having all these American bases. Iranians have shown a remarkable capacity to hit these bases in a pinpoint manner and using some of their Iraqi allies as well. So what does this mean for because Iran is not going anywhere, and anybody who looks at the geography of the Persian Gulf knows how susceptible these other Gulf states are to Iran.
In fact, their entire security model has collapsed. And they can't now rely again on the United States, because the United States has vacated its bases. And there's already complaints by these countries
that the interceptors have gone to Israel.
Yeah, exactly. That they, instead of protecting our security. They have put all their assets to protect Israel's security. So all that they've done, buying weapons from the United States, giving them bases, this petrodollar business, all that has not yielded to them the kind of security that they were hoping for. And here is a problematic thing for us, that you must have seen reports about Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE getting together.
Yes.
No, in Pakistan,
And
not
Pakistan,
UAE, in Pakistan getting together. Because Turkey very much wants to become part of the Saudi-Pakistani Defense Pact. Saudis have so far pushed back. If they agree, and it'll be a problem for us, because Pakistan then gets a very major role, security role, or a supplementary important security role in this area. And if there is reliance on Pakistan, which means these countries will have interest in building up Pakistan's military strength. They can't give them weapons, they don't produce them, but they can give them money so they can get weapons from wherever they want. This is something that we have to look at very carefully. And the fact that Egypt has joined surprises me, but there it is.
What is your sense of the Indian response? There has been a lot of criticism of the government that, they haven't condemned the attacks. They took 5 days for the Foreign Secretary to go and sign the condolence book. What is your sense? How do you look at the government of India's response?
Well, if I was in position to advise, I would have recommended that we should have condoled the death of Khamenei, for the simple reason that it was an act so utterly contrary, so repugnant to international law and the UN Charter, that we were on good ground to just condole that. I wouldn't have gone beyond that by accusing the United States or condemning the United States or what have you. We didn't condemn Russia when it did this military operation, started this military operation in Ukraine. Therefore, to be consistent, we should have stayed out, with the additional reason that while Putin is a much more measured, sober, statesman-like person, and this fellow is a rogue. So you never know how he would react. I mean, Trump.
Yeah.
So therefore, that's fine. But we should have condoled.
But also, sir, don't you think that our diplomacy is highly personalized? It's very individual centric. I mean, Prime Minister Modi didn't travel to Malaysia because he didn't want to be in the same room as Donald Trump. I mean, beyond that, these are relations, country to country relations.
But look, in the time of Nehru was worth it. He was the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. In fact, he was totally dominating the foreign policy. I'm just going ahead.
Yeah.
Indira Gandhi.
I don't want to get into that debate.
No. I'm saying something else.
Yeah.
When it came to Indira Gandhi, it was the same thing, because I lived through those years. I was in service. In the case of Inder Kumar Gujral, very sober man, a Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, he kept foreign policy under his grip. This is the pattern with the Prime Ministers, especially those Prime Ministers who feel that...
But look at Mr. Vajpayee. You were Foreign Secretary when there was so much pressure to send Indian troops to Iraq without a UN resolution. And I remember I was part of his traveling entourage and asking him many questions. And he said, "Hum aapse bhi salah lenge." That was the response he gave to a question that I asked him. And eventually, the decision that was taken, looking back at it, was probably in India's interest.
Circumstances were different. Because once he said...
We're stronger today, Mr.
No. He said that we and India and America are natural allies, right? Our relations with America had begun to improve a great deal. Today, they are in a different league altogether, with all the undercurrents of difficulties that the Americans present to us even now. And we should continue to be very careful that we don't go too far with them because they're not reliable. But nevertheless, there are huge areas in which we can benefit from this relationship. And therefore, we have to be now very careful in taking an overtly anti-American position.
But they're giving us permission to buy oil today.
Yeah.
This was, you can look at all, they say, okay, now you buy. We are a country of 1.5 billion people.
Yeah.
I'm saying that and I'm saying that we can have our domestic differences on a number of issues. All that I'm saying is that look at the scenario and our government doesn't say anything.
Yeah, but after all, Iran has been under sanctions for a long time. At one time, it was our second biggest oil supplier, about 22 million tons.
The Israelis are with Chabahan.
No, hold on.
Yeah.
And then we ceased buying oil from where we thought that we had other options and therefore we can yield to some pressure from the United States. In a real world where you have to take pragmatic decisions, we yielded. But on Russia, we have not yielded. They had Katsa, they had everything else, but we went ahead and bought our S-400s. We've continued to maintain our defense ties with Russia.
But imagine if we were buying that Russian oil at 40 odd dollars. Now we're paying almost $100 to the Russian.
No, that was different.
Yeah.
No, because there it was the discounted price was part of the sanctions, that it has to be $60 and not more, and that was a bonanza. So we were buying Russian oil galore, and 40% of our purchase was from Russia. But today there is no price cap, and therefore, if the current price is 90, 100 or whatever dollars, then we have to buy at the price, international price. Why should Russians give us a discount? I don't see any reason.
Right.
And therefore, we have to buy the oil.
So, looking at it and moving away from India a little bit, how does the global South deal with this current situation?
You see, global South does
If there is such a
does exist. As Jaishankar says, it is a sentiment, is something that you feel. Now, therefore, it is not a cohesive group where there is a consensus about how we should deal with the challenges that the global South faces. India has been proactive in the G20, made the African Union part of the G20 as a permanent member, and we have had 2-3 voice of the global South conferences, etc., etc. But if you look at these countries that form the global South, the majority of the countries of the world, there's no consensus. Look, even in a more restricted thing like BRICS or SCO, where you have China, Russia, India, South Africa, Brazil, and now Iran and UAE in the BRICS. How do you build a consensus? How do you build a consensus?
by not issuing a statement.
No, how do you build a consensus between India and China when we differ fundamentally on so many issues? And at the back of the mind, we always are concerned that China, the grip on the global governance should not become even stronger because space is being created by the follies of the United States. This is our concern. So how do we build a consensus? Now, I think we should, I think what we can do, and I have said that also, that somehow on this issue, Russia, India, China, Brazil, South Africa, and leave Iran and UAE out. We should come together in one form or the other and make some powerful statement with regard to the dangers that the world is facing and the global South in particular is facing if this war is not controlled. Therefore, focus on that without apportioning blame on anybody, that this has to be controlled because the consequences of this for the global economy, irrespective of where you are, including Europe, would be terrible. I don't know if we can reach that point where we can have a statement and that will cover us, because if we were to take the initiative ourselves, then we'll have the entire weight of Trump's idiosyncrasies weighing down upon us. But if it was part of a larger group, I think it could have an impact. But somebody then is speaking up to say, please, for heaven's sake, stop this. Look ahead. It is going out of control.
But how do you deal with, I'm sorry to use that word, a madman? I mean, how do you deal with a madman? I mean, whose consistency levels are, related to his next post on Truth Social.
I forgot to mention one other thing in part of the scenario I was developing. You must have one European country in this, and Spain is a good candidate. The Spanish Prime Minister, I don't know if you'll agree, but he has shown tremendous courage by openly saying this is an illegal war. We will not join it. And when Trump threatened him that I'll end economic ties with you, he said, so be it. We'll manage without you. Now, if you could get some European country to also be part of that, that will have a powerful thing. But I don't know whether that would be possible.
And what is your sense? I mean, the Iranians have, placed some conditions, in the public domain that they want a guarantee against attack, which is a tough one, and they want reparations, and they want all kinds of things before they agree to ending or stopping the war. So, if there is to be a guarantor to this, possible uh, peace deal, would it have to be the Russians or the Chinese? Who's going to? It can't be Oman who's negotiating.
No, no,
The,
no.
so who's going to do this?
You know why the JCPOA was the JCPOA? It was not a treaty. Is because Obama didn't want to go to the Congress, because only the Congress can ratify a treaty and bind the U.S. government permanently to a treaty. He thought that he would not get the majority in the U.S. Congress. So one way that Iranians could get that guarantee is if whatever is agreed is then passed by the U.S. Congress as a treaty, so that it has, therefore, no executive U.S. president can then violate that without the consent of the Congress. Apart from, of course, the U.S. UN Security Council also ratifying it. But beyond that,
Seems quite ineffective in today's world.
yeah, because even the Minsk agreements were ratified by the UN Security Council, and nevertheless, we see what has happened.
Yeah.
Therefore, one essential element would be that the U.S. it's a treaty, and the U.S. Congress ratifies this. But
do you see any role for Russia and China in this, or is it something which will have to be directly negotiated? Right now, the Iranians also don't seem. They're saying that you walked away from the negotiations precisely because they were succeeding. That's what they're saying.
Because their role can only be as part of the UN Security Council. Otherwise, they're not going to take a role outside the United Nations, because they're not going to underwrite Iran's security from the outside, because that'll embroil them potentially in a direct conflict with the United States. They wouldn't want to do that. But within the UN Security Council, if there was a unanimous resolution, then yes, they can play a role. Now, what they can do to buttress Iran would be to strengthen Iran's defense capability, which they are in a position to do. Give them arms, intelligence information.
Which they may be doing also. I mean, there are
Maybe they're not doing it enough today, but potentially they can do it. But I tell you, Amit, this is a very, very difficult situation, because United States cannot draw back without saying that it has won. And Iran cannot draw back by conceding it has lost. So how do you find middle ground? And Israel is uncontrolled. And I think the two countries to which we are close in many ways, US and Israel, together they have delivered a very major blow to our interests, deep blow to our interests. But look at our equities in the Gulf, and they have not thought about that, quite obviously. So, in a sense, it's our friends, not Iran. If Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz, it's not because India did anything this way.
And they point out it's not closed; it's close to their enemy nations and their allies.
So they have pushed Iran into this situation, and tomorrow, if they attack Iran's oil infrastructure, and Iran hits back at attacking Saudi Arabia's oil infrastructure and desalination plants, look at the mess that'll be created. And if there's no water, then what happens to our 1 crore people, 10 million people there? So
before I let you go, Mr. Sibal, you were also ambassador to Russia, and you follow the Russia-Ukraine. We've spoken in the past about it. What is your sense? How is Putin looking at this entire war?
They're very worried. In fact, I was a bit surprised that Lavrov said that if the objective of this war was to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons, in fact, this war will open the door to Iran acquiring nuclear weapons to protect itself in the future. Now, I know that Russia has been totally opposed to the idea of Iran becoming nuclear, because it destabilizes the whole region, and for the NPT goes for a 6.
But that seems to be the direction.
But yes, but the fact that Lavrov would now publicly envisage the possibility of Iran going nuclear means that they are in no position today, as in the past, to cooperate with others that 5+1 dialogue, which resulted in the JCPOA. Now, Russia cannot be a party to that anymore, or for that matter, China. So Russia is very worried, very worried. They don't know how to handle this. They don't want to get into a conflict with the United States. They want to keep the doors of a dialogue with Trump open, because Trump, by reaching it directly to Russia over the head of the Europeans, is actually marginalized Russians, which lays into the hands of Russia.
And marginalize the Europeans.
I didn't say that, marginalize the Europeans, which has played into the hands of Russia. So they know who Trump is, but they're taking full advantage of Trump's idiosyncrasies and his inconsistencies, because it helps them. And now that the U.S. attention has been now shifted to Iran, obviously the attention has shifted away from Ukraine. And Mr. Zelensky, therefore, wants to be very much in the middle of things and wants to tell everybody that I am there. And therefore, he's sending his specialists to this area to tell them how to deal with drones and everything else, hoping that his contribution will be recognized and he gets some benefits, some goals, even from the Gulf countries. But I think Zelensky and Ukraine are in trouble.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Sibal, for joining me on SpeakEasy. It's, as always, a delight to hear your opinions. So we are in a very tough situation in the region, in South Asia, in West Asia. How these things are going to pan out, nobody quite knows. But Mr. Sibal's insights suggest that it's going to be a long, drawn-out game, and it's not going to be easy to end this conflict. So we'll leave it here for today. Thank you, Mr. Sibal, again for joining us.
Thank you.